The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
All right, time for our activity on Tennessee agriculture. We spend a lot of time looking at agriculture in the state of Tennessee at the Center for Historic Preservation because we administer the Century Farms program that is in partnership with the Tennessee Ag Department. And so if you're ever driving around rural Tennessee and you see one of these large kind of white and yellow signs that says this is a Century Farm, that is something that one of my colleagues helped work to put on the list. And what it means is farms that have been in the same family for at least 100 years that have maintained a certain base amount of the original acreage and continue to produce a certain minimum amount of crop or product. So in other words, continual usage, not just this is the land where there used to be a farm, but this is a farm that has been in continuous operation in the same family. And there are even pioneer century farms, which are 200 years. In the same family. And so there are hundreds of these across the state in every single county. We even have several African-American century farms registered, which is very exciting for the stories that those tell. And so that is something that we have a lot of resources on. We have 30 years worth of photographs and other kinds of things in our own kind of databases. So one of our graduate students who is going to be researching the African-American century farms for his dissertation, he lives on a farm in Wilson County, and he did this activity for us. It's based on a lesson plan that is now on our website. It's one of our newer ones, and so I believe that's already been posted, and I'll show you where you can see that later today. So first of all, I have some questions. And this is something that you can go to the agriculture entry for the Tennessee Encyclopedia of History and Culture and have students read that, or that's something that you can review before you teach class. But we're not going to look at that right now. So what is agriculture?
Farming.
Farming. And why do you think agriculture is important to Tennessee's history?
Well, because the whole reason to move into West Tennessee was for the farmland.
Okay, farmland.
And it's money.
So it was the way most people made a living.
You can't live somewhere that you can't grow food. I mean, it's at
one
least
of
in
the
early
largest-
Tennessee history.
It's one of the largest economic activities in Tennessee.
All right. How can agriculture inform us of themes in Tennessee history? And this is something that will become clearer as we move through the activity. So keep that one in mind. We'll revisit it. Okay. Because all of our lesson plans have an investigative question, I'm going to go ahead and pull that one up. In what ways has agriculture's role in Tennessee's history changed over time? This is, of course, change over time is the kind of thing that's kind of tricky to teach when your subject is divided up chronologically. So they might learn about the, beginnings of slavery in 8th grade and then the civil rights movement in high school. So when you're talking about the long arc of the struggle for freedom, it's not going to be contained in just one grade level subject. And so the same thing with, a question like agriculture is you can teach it across grade levels. So how do you even approach something when it doesn't appear in one little chronological bit? Because that's the order that the standards are in, right? It's hard to teach something that's really, really long and enduring when you have to go in a timeline. So that's why we're kind of doing this thematically as well. This is mostly going to look at the second half of the American History Survey. So this is more kind of a fifth grade high school. And we're going to be using this primary source analysis tool. Basically, you have your observe, reflect, and question, which separates the kinds of answers you want students to give you into these three categories, starting off with observe your primary source. Draw out every single observation that can be based just on looking at it and reading it. So pretend you know nothing about it. Don't bring in any background knowledge yet. Just look at it and start with the very, very obvious things. A lot of times you might want to start interpreting it, but hold the interpretation for the second column, reflect. Reflect is where you reflect on what you already know and how it helps you interpret what it is that you're looking at. So this is where your existing knowledge of history and culture will help you make sense of what you're looking at, and you can say, this is what's going on here. And then the third column is question. What questions do you have about this? And those usually run a very wide gamut, especially for students. Sometimes students come up with very interesting questions that kind of show what direction their interests are pointing. So we're going to do this, and we're going to do this in different groups. I have groups of primary sources, so we're not going to move desks, but you are going to have to kind of squish together. So each group is going to get a primary source, and there should be enough copies for everyone to have their own to look at. And these also have the title and a date. So that can be something that you can bring into your background knowledge when you're reflecting on, oh, well, this is from this date, which means I know what happened right before, right after it, what have you. So I'm going to go ahead and pass these out.
I'm not sure if it's, maybe this is the first part of it and this was a continuation. But I cannot read it.
All right. We're going to go through each of these sets of sources or single sources. And when your source comes up on the slide, then you can report out. So just kind of sum up the discussion that y'all had about your source/sources. And you don't have to read everything that you put on like your analysis sheet or anything like that. You can just sum it up if you want, or what you thought was the most interesting about it. So starting off with this one.
It shows the agriculture of the state, and it almost kind of looks like it's divided into sections based on color.
I think it's trying to say what you could grow in that area, or what type of resources are available. I'm trying to read the little tiny fine print, and one of them mentioned coal, and one of them said something about bluff loam.
Yes, I promise you that if you open this up in the Zoom view and you look at it on the website, you can zoom in close enough to read all the words. And so this might be something you want to do as a class on the screen. But yes, so you have, this is the key with all the different colors, and you can see agricultural potential, right?
Yeah.
And this, you can also see geographical features. So again, this is the land determining Tennessee's future in a way. What other thoughts did you have about it?
You can see counties
You can see the counties, yeah.
and the rivers.
It also shows that they're like kind of compartmentalized. You can almost see the 3 grand divisions, being represented.
Absolutely. You can see the central basin too. Yeah.
The Cumberland Plateau is very obvious.
Mm-hmm. Good. Next one. Group 2.
Let's see. So we were looking at the first one on the left, and we noticed it just looks like a very, very small family farm, possibly. Obviously, he's doing the work with a horse and a plow, so no mechanization for him at this point. I mean, it says it's 1937, so there was mechanization, but he's not using it at this point for whatever reason. just a small farming, very dry. And then if you look over on the right, like that one looks like that's a bigger operation. There are 2 different plows going or whatever. We can't really tell exactly what that is, but there are horses. And I was wondering if they're setting tobacco, but I can't really tell from this point. But there's water. There's a water source right there next to them for that land, probably to be a little more fertile than what the other guy is working with. And
Good. And this one has a dog. Right. Whenever there's a dog in a primary source, the students are like, dog!
He clearly has mules and not horses. They don't look like horses.
Oh yeah, those of you who can tell a mule from a horse, right, that would be a mule, which mules are also very important to Tennessee history too, of course. Was it Mule Day in Columbia, right? And Uncle Dave Macon had a mule route between Woodbury and Murfreesboro. Yeah, these might be mules too. I don't know, I didn't think about that. Okay, thank you, Group 2. Group 3.
Okay, so we noticed that both pictures, one of them is boys and one of them is girls, so we immediately noticed that. We also noticed that they're from the same place. So it's like an agricultural school, it looks like, made by the TVA. Yeah. One of them indoor, one of them's outdoors. On the right, the picture is like teacher focused, and on the left, it looks like just 2 students. With the boys, they're both from the same year. We also noticed that they're all white in the picture as well. This is the source date was 1942, so this would be like pre-integration of schools. Some of the questions, well, I don't guess we had any questions yet, but
We weren't sure what the purpose of the pictures were.
if it was like advertising for the school to come there or showing off electricity because it's TVA, because they're both using electric tools.
Yes, both of these are from the Farm Security Administration / Office of War Information photographs collection. This is the one that has all the Great Depression pictures as well as all of the TVA, World War II, Rosie the Riveter type pictures. It's like one of the largest photograph collections on the Library of Congress. And because they were all taken as part of different government New Deal programs, they all belong to the government, so they're all public domain for us, which is great. So that's one important thing your students need to learn, is that these were taken by people sent out from the government to take pictures of schools set up by a New Deal program. And so their interest is to make it look what?
Fun.
Yeah, good, fun.
How much fun they're having.
Yes, now what did TVA do? What did TVA do to places like Knox County?
Provided electricity and built dams and
Yeah, provide electricity and other things where there was none in a lot of these rural areas. So this is the first generation that's going to, reach adulthood using electricity. So this is like the wave of the future. Look how excited everyone is about using electricity because it's going to make everybody's lives better. So yeah, it does have a propagandistic purpose to it. I mean, it is to document, it is to inform, it is to report, but it's also, look how happy and excited they are, and look how clean cut. Look at those smooth little curls.
We also noticed he's using some very heavy equipment over there to work on that mule-drawn plow. Kind of, I don't know if that's like symbolic or something.
I know, isn't this hilarious? We've got like this like pneumatic drill, right? It's not, but you know what I mean. And then this plow that could be 5,000 years old.
And
right?
then that was my question was, are those items really plugged in? The source of an outlet, and it kind of looks like maybe the end is right there.
It does kind of look like the end is right there.
Yeah,
at
like
the
it's
end.
not really plugged in. And then I was thinking about iron cords aren't very long, so where exactly is the outlet?
Well, I love that because that brings a very important question: is it staged? And so, with a lot of these government pictures, you got to wonder, like, how candid is it? How staged is it? And being staged doesn't mean it doesn't represent something that actually happened there, but especially with like a collection like the child labor photo collections. The real staged ones are the pictures of like the dead soldiers at Gettysburg, because he was moving those around and shoving them and propping them up and that kind of stuff. Staged, yep. We have a lesson plan about it. Anyway, so yes, those are the fun pictures that you can ask all those questions about. But this is showing you what's going to happen to agricultural life in rural places, bringing them into the modern age. Okay, group 4, you guys had words.
Well, first of all, we had a tough time with the one that says Queen of the Farm, and our work is very small lettering, so we couldn't hardly read it. We got some ideas out of it, though. We were, well, obviously, our observation was there was photographs of women working on the farm, animals pulling plows, typical rural scenes of farm life. It came from Carroll County. It's 1913. At least the Queen of the Work thing is. I'm not really sure where the other article came from.
This is all the same article.
Okay, well, we were wondering about the same thing, whether it was a continuation of the same article or not, because since we couldn't read the first part, we couldn't tell the second part was attached to it or not. But it's basically a article about the changing roles of women on the farm. That women are taking on more responsibilities, doing more of what they call typical man's work, like plowing and planting and reaping. And then in the article mentioned some new equipment that they had, some new machinery that allowed her to be able to do things that might muscularly not be able to do previously, but now the machine can do it for her, so she's able to keep up with the man on the farm. So we think it's a promotion of women working on the farm kind of idea.
All right, good. And again, if you, there's a way that you can open this up in Chronicling America, zoom in and read the words, but I think the point of making it so small was so you could see the pictures on this one, and then this to read the words. But sometimes it's hard for us to print out the newspapers so that they're easier to read. They're usually the easiest to read on the computer screen. And group 5, you also had words. You had 2 things of words.
I'm going to start with the one on the right, the Farmer's Prayer first, because that's the one we actually read first. And one of of course, it's just a poem written in the, one of the first things that we noticed about it was that it was written by a woman. It says Mrs. B down there at the bottom. So we're assuming that is who wrote it. But it does, and it says kind of in the end, the last stanza down there, help me in trial to be a man, to do my duties cheerfully. So it's kind of ironic that she's talking about to be a man, but it's a woman writing it. And we also noticed the date on that was 1920, which is right around the time women are getting the right to vote. So that we were thinking that could have kind of gone together. So this woman's kind of running her farm and she wants the right to vote too, and kind of put that together. The article on the left-hand side is actually from Tennessee. It's from Crossville, Tennessee. I thought that was pretty interesting. But it talks about it's 1919, so of course this is right after World War I, and it talks about the men coming back from the war wanting to go back to farming. And prior to World War I, that's kind of industrial revolution, everybody was moving to working in factories, but now they're wanting to go back to the farms, and the bottom of that one also talks about the women wanting to farm as well. And in the bottom, we thought it was very interesting, the last line, because it talks about unmarried women getting together to build a farm, to farm together, and then it says a lot of them their previous occupation was school teachers. So.
Well, there you go, ladies. You can all leave your jobs and go make a communal farm somewhere. Very good. What we're going to do, and keep all these in mind and stay in your groups, we are now going to focus on one Century Farm. We picked one in Rutherford County because that's where I am. And I have 3 different things to show you with this Century Farm. It's called Elmwood. And so what I want you to do, first of all, I'm going to give you the summary paragraph from the National Register nomination for this farm, because it is on the National Register. And National Register nominations are a really excellent source to find really good history about farms and other historic sites. And then there are 2 different maps that you're going to look at and compare after that. And when you are reading about Elmwood, keep in mind the primary sources that we just looked at from the groups, and see what kinds of connections can be drawn. See what themes come up, either among primary sources or between those that we saw and this farm. And this is the way that the farmhouse looks to this day. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass out this excerpt, this close-up from a Beers map. D.G. Beers was this map maker in the late 19th century who did maps of all the Tennessee counties. And I have a big one of Rutherford County up on the wall in my office, and this is a close-up of that. And the name of the family, as you can see in the summary, is Hoard, but on this map it's spelled H-O-A-R-D. So see if you can find it. I already gave a couple clues. It's between Murfreesboro and Smyrna. All right. Let's take a look at the Beers map for a second to talk a little bit about the context of this farm. Now, the Hoard family is listed in 2 spots right here. So they probably had a relative living close by, but the house that you saw is this one right here off of Murfreesboro Pike, which is what we call Old Nashville Highway. So that's it. What kinds of transportation routes does this have access to?
Railroad.
I was thinking the same thing.
And road.
Yeah. The main railroad that goes through the county, as well as one of the major roads. This is the road that connects Murfreesboro and Nashville. So that's a very important transportation route. And somebody mentioned earlier, the house was used as a field hospital during the Battle of Stones River, because you can see here's Cemetery Station, National Cemetery. This is the National Cemetery for the Battle of Stones River, and the battlefield is now here. So the battlefield is not marked because it wasn't made a battlefield park until the 1920s. But all of these areas, their farms all had a battle across them. And so you can see that the Hoard farm is just up the road from that, so they were not spared. So that's part of the story of that farm. And anything else that's important that's nearby?
Stones River.
Railroad.
Yeah. You've got the West Fork of the Stones River there, and then you've got this other fork. So yeah, you've got your water sources. Oh, it's actually, when I cross it right here, it's called Overall Creek, because I always take a look and it's very beautiful. So yes, it's right next to a source of water, and you have to have the means to get your crop to market. So it's a really well situated one. Now let's look at the modern map. Now what has happened to the transportation routes around this?
Well, there's 840.
It's interstate.
Yeah, 840. Shoom. 840 cuts right through there. And see this 41, this is Broad Street that now goes between Murfreesboro and Smyrna. And this Old Nashville Highway is that road that's called Murfreesboro Pike on the Beers map. These did not exist yet, of course. So here it is. You can see Overall Creek. This gray line right here, this is the railroad. So those are still there, of course. So what does this tell you about agriculture in Rutherford County?
I mean, there's still quite a bit of green, but it definitely has declined.
Mm-hmm.
They shipped probably on the river and
they used the railroad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rutherford County farms, for the most part, had good transportation. But now you can see that you can still see the farmlands. If you do the aerial view, you can see kind of the plots of land. But if you were to zoom out, you'd see a lot of brand new neighborhoods.
Yeah, you can see one in the bottom corner.
Yeah, you can see one down there.
Was their farm split by the interstate? Is that why the road does that weird? Does it go under it to get to their other plot of the land on the other side of not the interstate, I guess, but?
Yes. I come back from Smyrna every week on this road. and it goes over 840. It doesn't connect to 840. So it's not like this farm has any easy access to these two major arteries. You have to drive way down to catch either of those. But when you go over 840, on the other side, there's a little road that goes off. That's Horde Road. So
They own all that land over there too?
I think they still do. So yeah, and it's still farmed. So this bisects their property. And this is one of the reasons why it took 840 so long to be built, because it had to go through so much private property and come up with a lot of opposition, and then, have to pull eminent domain in places like that. And, farmers really don't have a lot of choice in a lot of cases. And then a lot of farmers, they sell their land and it turns into a subdivision, and then there's more pressure on the lands around it to do the same. So we are experiencing a lot of that. Rutherford County is like a really fast-growing county. I'm sure these other ones are too. But yes, so we like to always connect historic things to what they look like today and what the pressures are, because this is still part of the story of agriculture in Tennessee. It's still going on today in every single part of the state, but it looks very different, and the pressures on it are very different.
Do you know if any part of the first picture, is any part of that the lake now?
No, but the town of Jefferson that had the Trail of Tears, that town got sunk under Percy Priest Lake. So that's gone. Well, some of it was gone. But okay, so did you see any kind of connections in the story of this one farm? Because sometimes it helps to do like a case study and look at one individual farm to talk about larger trends.
I mean, part of it is how do you preserve something when that land is so valuable and wanted?
Okay.
So as you said, there's so much pressure to just sell. But then how do you go about preserving the legacy of something, especially, with younger generations not being interested in farming?
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to see, you have this 5th generation farm still sitting there and people are still wanting to farm it, where, you could talk to your kids about, well, if this was your family history, what would you do?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You think about the value of the land is not what it used to be. You can't really make any money on that farm now. It's not big enough, not enough property. So as a farm, it's almost useless. So the only thing it has is a historical site. It's the only value it has. And if you don't care about that, then it's got no value at all.
Why is it that farms this size are not turning a profit?
Industrial farming
is the way to go.
And, the paragraph talks about the mechanization of the farm, and this is, the story of agriculture in Tennessee is one of increased cooperation with technology or adaptation to different mechanization and new farming practices, new science that emerges that says this is how you should be treating your crops and all those kinds of things. So these farms are desperately trying to keep up with the times. And they are turning to mechanization, and we saw that actually allows for more women's participation in farming, because women have always been farmers. I don't like reading stories that talk about the farmer and his wife. I'm like, the farmer and the other farmer, and they live together on a farm, right? They just happen to be married, right? How is she not a farmer? But anyway. But even, there's only, mechanization can only take you so far until you just need like more and more land for it to actually do that. So that's one of the trends in agriculture that is the reason why these family farms, one of the many reasons why they're being squeezed. And this one reason why the Century Farms program exists, because we want to recognize people who do stick around, because they're obviously not doing it for the money, right? We know something about that, right? You do it because you love it, right? Not because of the money. Okay, now we don't have time to go through all the wonderful think pieces, but there are some questions that you could ask your students to get them to kind of think more about agriculture in Tennessee. As with many different themes in our state's history, you can tell the story of Tennessee history by looking at different changes in agriculture, for one thing. You can also see how agricultural issues connect with your students' experiences. They may not be interested in farming. They may not have connection to a farm that they think about, but you go back far enough and most people will have farmers in their family trees. I know I do. They're just not in Tennessee. But maybe some of your students do live on a farm. Do they live next to a farm? Does the subdivision that they live in, was it a farm? And when was it converted from a farm into a subdivision? And that just means looking at some old maps. Is there a cemetery on the farm? Sometimes that's how you know what the name of the family was. Another good thing is, have they ever been to a farm like for a pumpkin patch or a farmer's market or a strawberry picking or a blueberry picking? Like those kinds of things. There's a lot of agritourism now in Tennessee. And there's a lot of farm-to-table stuff too. You go into Walmart, there's a big sign on the wall saying, our tomatoes were grown just up the road by this family, and it'll have a picture of a family farm. And so these are things that even your students who might be like uber suburban, they all are only like 1 or 2 steps removed from a farm. And so you just, have them go out and like think, where did your food come from? Do you know? And are your parents or grandparents from a farm? How close are you to the nearest farm?
It goes to a larger subject. I talk to my students about how history is cyclic. It goes around and around. You get the family farm, then the industrial farm comes in, and people complain about the industrial farm, and it goes back to organic family farming. Agriculture kind of mirrors that little, cycle of progress and then pull back from progress and pull back from progress, and it seems to be it's mirrored in the same thing.
I wouldn't say you pull back from progress because that equates progress with mechanization and corporatization. I would say how it just changes. Yeah. I'm particular about that word progress because it's been used in so many ways. But yeah, now the hipster thing is to do like local farm fresh. My bacon comes from just one farm, just like 50 miles away, and Beatty Farm, I think, right? And I go to the farmers market. My bread is made by Flying S Farms every single week, and that's what I eat every morning for breakfast. And they know my name, and if I'm not there every week to buy bread, they wonder what happened to me. So I have a connection to a farming family, and they make the best bread. Anyway, yeah, I highly recommend it. So anyway, but yes, so this is the kind of thing that's really hard for students to grasp at first. But when you start thinking about all the little connections in your life, Tennessee's still a very rural state in some places, and of course we all still have to eat. And there are a lot of programs that are trying to help these farms exist into the modern era. And so what can we do to help support that?